The cell was cold, darker than any night she remembered. The walls pressed close like iron jaws, and the floor beneath her was stone, hard and unyielding. For 16 nights, she had laid her fragile body upon that merciless ground, and each dawn she rose weaker than the last. She was not human, though her form carried the shape of one. Her skin glimmered faintly with silver undertones, and her eyes shone like broken moons in the dark. She was an exile from her own kind, cast aside and captured by those who believed she was less than dirt. They offered her no bed, no blanket, not even the dignity of warmth, only stone, always stone. Every night the cold crept into her bones. It gnawed at her joints and sent sharp pains racing through her back. She tried to dream, but dreams never came. Only the endless awareness of suffering. Only the echo of footsteps outside her cage. Heavy boots that reminded her she was forgotten, unwanted. On the first night, she had whispered to herself, promising survival. By the 5th night, her voice broke into silence. By the 10th, she could barely lift her head. Now, on the 16th, she did not know if she would live to see another dawn. She curled into herself, pressing her arms against her chest. Her body trembled. Her lips cracked from thirst. She remembered the soft grass of her homeworld, remembered sleeping beneath twin stars that painted her skin in pale firelight. Those memories burned like cruel jokes now. The stars were gone. The grass was gone. Only stone remained. Yet she refused to die. Her heart beat slow, but it still beat. Her breath rattled, but it still moved. She would endure. She must endure. From beyond the bars, a faint sound broke the silence. Not the usual heavy boots of guards, not the mocking laughter she feared. It was softer, deliberate, a tread unlike the rest. The sound drew closer, each step carrying a strange rhythm. She lifted her head with effort. Her silver eyes narrowed, and her weak hands pressed against the stone for support. She expected another tormentor, perhaps a commander come to remind her of her worthlessness. But what she saw was different. A figure stood in the dim glow of the corridor, taller than most she had seen, his shoulders broad, his presence commanding. Yet there was something in his stance, something not born of cruelty. His face was shadowed, but the outline of his features revealed he was not like the others. He was human. The word whispered in her mind like an echo from old stories. Humans, strange and unpredictable. Some said they were monsters. Others said they carried fire in their hearts that could burn even the darkest night. She had never seen one before, until now. The human stopped before her cell. He did not shout, did not strike the bars. He simply looked. His eyes caught the faint light and reflected back something she had not seen in many days. Recognition. As if he did not see a prisoner, but a being, a soul. Her heart pounded with both fear and confusion. Why had he come? What did he want? She pressed herself tighter into the corner, the stone cold against her back. Her voice cracked as she tried to speak, but no words came. For a moment, silence reigned. Only the steady rhythm of his breath reached her ears. Then, slowly, he crouched near the bars. His hand did not reach through, but hovered close, open, not threatening. "You've been here too long," he said. His voice was low, not cruel, not mocking. There was weight in his words, a gravity that pulled at her weary soul. Her eyes widened. Shock coursed through her. No one had spoken to her with gentleness for 16 nights, perhaps not even for years before that. The human's gaze moved over her thin frame, the way she shook, the bruises lining her arms. For a moment, his jaw tightened, as if holding back anger, not anger at her, but at the world that had allowed this. She did not know why, but a flicker of hope stirred in her chest, fragile as a candle in the wind. She tried again to speak, her voice rough, broken. "Why are you here?" she whispered. The human did not answer at once. His silence carried more meaning than words. At last, he leaned closer, eyes steady. "Because no one should endure stone floors for 16 nights, he said. Her breath caught. A shiver ran through her. This was no guard, no tormentor. This was something different, something dangerous in its own way, for kindness was a risk, and she did not know if she had the strength to believe in it. But as his words settled into the darkness, she realized the 17th night might not be the same. The 17th night began with silence. The prisoner thought it would be another night of endless cold, another night of stone pressing against her bones. But this night carried something different. It carried the presence of the human. He stood at the edge of her cage. His figure cast a shadow across the cracked floor. She had seen many faces lean close to those bars, some mocking, some cruel, but never one that looked like his. His eyes did not wander like hunters searching for prey. They lingered instead with a strange heaviness, as if he carried a burden invisible to others. She wanted to look away, yet her tired eyes refused. They held on to him. Desperate, confused, he crouched, resting his arms upon his knees. And in the dim glow of the corridor, she saw lines carved by years of hardship across his face. He was not a boy, nor yet old. He carried the look of someone who had fought too many battles and survived only because he refused to fall. "What is your name?" he asked. His voice was quiet, not demanding, but patient. She blinked. Her lips trembled. No one had asked her that in years. To them she was only a number, a tool, a thing to be broken. She hesitated, then whispered, "Lyra." The name escaped like a secret torn from her chest. The human nodded once. "Lyra," he repeated, as if saying it gave it weight again, as if he was returning something she had lost. "I'm Kale." She stared. The words sounded strange, short, strong. Human names were not often spoken among her kind. For them, humans were creatures of myth, destroyers and builders, dangerous but unpredictable. Yet here was one kneeling before her cell, giving her his name as if they were equals. "Why do you speak to me?" she asked, her voice cracked, suspicion mixing with curiosity. "Do you want something?" Kale's gaze softened. He shook his head. "I saw what they left you with, 16 nights on stone floors. No being deserves that." His hand curled into a fist at his side, a flash of anger breaking through. Her chest tightened. She had seen anger before, but never anger that burned for her sake. She did not know whether to trust it or fear it. "You are human," she said carefully, as though the word itself could break him. "Humans do not care for exiles like me." "Maybe not all," he replied, his voice steady. "But I am not all." The silence stretched between them. Lyra pressed her back against the wall. She could feel her heartbeat racing. She wanted to ask why this stranger had come when no one else did, but she could not find the words. Kale rose slowly to his feet. His shadow stretched longer, towering, yet the weight of his presence did not crush her. It wrapped around her like a shield. "You will not sleep on stones again," he said. Her breath caught. The promise was too large, too dangerous. She shook her head weakly. "If the guards see you, they will punish you." "I've lived with punishment before," Kale answered simply, as though it did not matter. She lowered her gaze. Her silver eyes shimmered with faint tears she did not wish to shed. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk it for me?" Kale's voice lowered. His words carried something heavier than sympathy. "Because I remember what it was like to be forgotten." The corridor trembled faintly as boots echoed from afar. Kale turned his head sharply. His expression hardened. "I'll return," he promised. His eyes locked onto hers. And then he was gone, slipping into the shadows with steps that made no sound. Lyra pressed her palms against the stone. Her chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. For the first time in many nights, her heart did not sink into despair. Instead, it beat with restless fire. She did not know what Kale truly wanted, nor what his presence meant, but she knew this. The 17th night was no longer the same as the last 16, and when dawn came, the memory of the human's voice lingered like warmth upon her frozen soul. The morning after the 17th night came slowly. A pale light filtered through the cracks above her cell. Lyra stirred on the stone, her body aching as always, but her mind restless. For the first time in many nights, she had not counted her breaths waiting for despair. Instead, she had remembered the human's voice. She wondered if he had been real at all. Perhaps her starved mind had conjured him from fragments of old tales, but the memory was too sharp, too vivid. She remembered his eyes, the way he spoke her name as though it still mattered. The day dragged forward. Guards passed by, tossing scraps of food through the bars. She did not move to take them. Hunger burned inside her, but her spirit held on to something greater now, something that whispered, "Wait." When night fell again, footsteps returned, softer than the guards, measured and calm. She lifted her head quickly, Her breath caught. It was him. Kale. He stepped into the dim light of the corridor, his face still shadowed but unmistakable. He crouched again at her bars, this time with something in his hands, a small bundle wrapped in fabric. Lyra's eyes narrowed, suspicion and hope colliding within her chest. "Why do you return?" she asked, her voice trembled. "Do you seek to mock me with false kindness?" Kale shook his head. "No, I came because I made a promise." He unwrapped the bundle slowly, revealing a folded blanket, worn but clean. "You will not sleep on stone tonight." Her breath stilled. She stared at the fabric as if it were a treasure stolen from the heavens, a bed. She had not touched one in years. The very thought seemed impossible. I cannot," she whispered, retreating into the corner. "If they see, they will punish me and you." Kale's jaw tightened. He slid the blanket through the bars and let it rest upon the floor. His hand lingered just beyond the iron, open and steady. "Then we won't let them see." Her silver eyes shimmered. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded, the question breaking out before she could stop it. "You are human. They say humans do not risk themselves for others. They say you are only selfish." "Then they do not know us," Kale replied. His voice carried no pride, only quiet certainty. "I've lived on stone myself. I've felt what it means when the world decides you don't matter. I won't let that happen to you. Not if I can stop it." Lyra's throat ached. She wanted to reject his words, to keep the shield of distrust around her heart. But her body betrayed her. She reached out, fingers trembling, touching the blanket as though it might vanish if she pressed too hard. Warmth, real warmth, spread through her skin. Her eyes closed for a moment, and a single tear slid down her cheek. "I don't understand you," she whispered, "but I will take it." Kale gave a faint nod. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Rest, Lyra. You need your strength. Tomorrow may test us both." Her eyes snapped open. "Tomorrow?" she asked sharply. Fear rose again. "What do you mean?" Kale stood, his shadow stretching over the cell. His gaze burned with quiet fire. "This place won't hold forever," he said. "Not if I have anything to do with it." Her heart lurched. Was he speaking of escape? Of rebellion? She wanted to ask, but the weight of his words left her silent. As his footsteps faded into the corridor, she clutched the blanket to her chest. For the first time in 16 nights, she lay upon something soft, fragile hope wrapped around her like armor. The stone was still beneath her, but now there was something between, something that reminded her she was more than a prisoner, more than an exile. And as she drifted into uneasy sleep, she realized the human had not just given her a blanket. He had given her something she thought forever lost. A choice. The blanket had been a miracle, but the following night brought something even greater. Lyra sat awake in her cell, clutching the fabric to her chest. She had not dared to close her eyes for long. Her mind still whispered that it could be taken away, torn from her by guards who enjoyed breaking what little she had. But when the soft sound of footsteps returned, her heart leapt. Kale appeared again, his face no longer a shadow to her eyes. The dim corridor lights revealed his sharp features, the lines of exhaustion etched deep into his skin, yet behind them was a steady strength. "You are awake," he said quietly. His voice carried calm, but she could hear something beneath it, a determination that made her shiver. "I was waiting," she admitted, her fingers tightened around the blanket. "I thought perhaps you would not return." Kale crouched near the bars again. This time, instead of a bundle, he held something larger, rolled and tied with rope. With a careful motion, he slid it through the bars, the roll unfurled. A thin but real mattress, patched and worn, yet soft enough to make her breath catch. Lyra froze. Her silver eyes widened as though she stared at treasure. What is this?" "A bed," Kale answered simply. "Not much, but better than stone." Her chest tightened. The word itself felt like a dream. Her kind had stripped her of every comfort, every piece of dignity. But here, this human was returning it, piece by piece. She hesitated, fear still coiled inside her. "If they discover it." "They won't," Kale interrupted, his tone sharpened like steel. "I've arranged the guard rotations. They will not come this way tonight." Lyra blinked. Her suspicion rose. "Why would you risk so much? For me? You don't even know me." Kale's eyes darkened. His silence stretched for a moment. Then he said, "I know enough. You've suffered when you shouldn't have. That is reason enough." The words struck deep. She could not look away from him. Something stirred in her chest. Not trust, not yet, but the fragile spark of it. With trembling hands, she lowered herself onto the mattress. The moment her body touched it, a sigh escaped her lips. The softness cradled her bruises. The ache in her bones eased. Her eyes closed for an instant, and a tear slipped free before she could stop it. "It feels unreal," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't remember the last time I felt this." Kale's expression softened. He leaned closer to the bars. "Hold on to it. Lyra, remember this feeling. It means you are still alive." Her eyes opened again, shimmering with both gratitude and fear. "You speak as if I will not be here long." Kale glanced down the corridor, his jaw set. "You won't. Not if I can help it." The weight of his words pressed against her heart. Escape. The thought had been nothing more than a dream, a cruel fantasy she dared not touch. But now, hearing it from him, it seemed almost possible. "Why?" she asked again, her voice barely a breath. "Why me?" Kale's gaze lingered on her, steady and unshaken. "Because every being deserves a chance to stand, to live, to rest without fear, and because I see something in you, something worth saving." Her breath caught. Her chest burned with emotions she could not name. For 16 nights, she had been nothing but a shadow on the floor. Now, with his words, she felt human again, even though she was not. Kale rose, adjusting the rope that had once bound the mattress. "Rest now," he said firmly. "Tomorrow, I will bring more than a bed." Her heart pounded. More than a bed? What did he mean? She wanted to ask, but her voice failed her. Instead, she lay back upon the mattress, the blanket pulled over her thin frame. As Kale's footsteps faded into the dark, she stared at the ceiling, her body sinking into warmth. Her mind no longer clung to survival alone. For the first time in years, she dreamed. And when dawn came, she knew that her 17th and 18th nights had become something greater. The nights when hope returned, carried not by her own kind, but by a human. The mattress felt like a world of its own. For 16 nights, Lyra had known nothing but the cruelty of stone. Now, as her body sank into softness, her mind drifted somewhere it had forgotten existed. She did not fight sleep this time. She surrendered. Her breaths grew slow. Her trembling eased. For the first time in years, her dreams were not filled with chains and fear. She dreamed of stars, not as distant lights, but as companions. She dreamed of her home, of warm winds brushing against her silver skin, and in those dreams, she was no longer alone. Kale remained nearby, hidden in the corridor shadows. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. His eyes never left the bars of her cell. He had seen prisoners before, many broken beyond repair, but this one was different. Something in her eyes had fought against despair even as her body failed. Something told him she was not meant to vanish into the dark. He remembered his own nights on stone, forgotten by allies, punished for standing against orders he could not obey. He had survived, but only barely, and now, staring at her fragile form curled upon the mattress, he knew he could not walk away. The corridor was quiet except for the faint hum of the old lamps, but Kale's ears caught every sound. The distant clank of weapons, the shuffle of guards 2 halls away. He had mapped their patterns for days, memorized the moments of silence. He had not given her a bed by chance. He was preparing something more. Inside the cell, Lyra stirred. Her voice whispered in her sleep, words broken and soft. Kale leaned closer, straining to hear. She murmured a name, perhaps of someone long gone, perhaps of herself. He did not know, but the sound tightened his chest. He glanced at the small clock device strapped to his wrist. The rotations would shift soon. He had little time, but he did not move. Instead, he crouched low, whispering words she could not hear. "Rest, little star. Your fight isn't over yet." Hours passed. The cell remained untouched. Lyra slept deeply, and Kale's resolve grew sharper with each passing moment. He had no plan written on paper, no allies waiting in secret, only his own will and the fire that told him humans could be more than what others believed. When dawn crept in again, Lyra opened her eyes slowly. For a heartbeat she did not know where she was. The softness beneath her confused her. The warmth startled her. Then she remembered. the mattress, the blanket, and him. Her gaze darted toward the bars, searching, and she saw Cale, still there, sitting silently with his back against the wall, his eyes closed, but his posture alert even in rest. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice weak but touched with wonder. Cale opened his eyes at once, sharp and clear. He gave a short nod. "I said you wouldn't be left on stone again." Her chest tightened. Gratitude threatened to break her silence, but with it came fear. "You risk too much, Cale. They will see. They will punish you." He stood, stretching slowly, his expression unreadable. "I've carried punishment before. What matters is whether it's worth carrying." She frowned, confusion in her silver eyes. "And am I worth it?" His gaze locked onto hers, firm and unflinching. "Yes," he said simply, no hesitation, no pause. Her breath faltered. She looked away, unable to hold the weight of his certainty. Something inside her shifted, fragile walls she had built for survival beginning to crack. Cale stepped closer to the bars, lowering his voice. "Tonight will not be like the others. I'll need your trust." Her eyes snapped back to him, fear returning. "Trust? You ask for that after everything." "I don't ask for blind faith," Cale replied. "Only that when the moment comes, you choose to rise instead of kneel." Her hands tightened around the blanket. Her heart pounded. She wanted to protest, to say she was too weak, too broken. But in his eyes she saw something unshakable, a fire that demanded she see herself as more than a prisoner. The mattress beneath her was not just comfort. It was a promise, a beginning. Lyra's lips trembled as she whispered, "Then I will try." Cale gave a single nod, nothing more, yet in that gesture was a bond stronger than chains. The night had changed her, and him. Neither of them would face the coming days the same. Dawn crept through the cracks in the ceiling like thin threads of silver. Lyra stirred beneath the blanket, her body no longer aching from stone. For the first time in so many nights, she did not wake with pain gnawing at her spine. Instead, she woke with confusion, then wonder. Her silver eyes fluttered open, and she saw the mattress beneath her, soft, real. Her hands clenched the blanket tightly as though afraid it would vanish if she let go. For a long moment she lay still, listening to her own breath, steady and calm. It felt foreign, almost frightening. Then her gaze drifted to the corner outside her cell. Cale was there, leaning against the wall. His eyes were closed but his posture straight, alert. Even in rest, he had not left her. He had stayed through the night. "You." Her voice cracked, barely a whisper. "You stayed." Cale opened his eyes immediately, sharp as if he had not slept at all. His gaze settled on her, and for the first time she saw something softer in those eyes. Not just strength, but relief. "I said you wouldn't be left on stone again," he replied quietly. His words carried weight, as though they were more than a promise, as though they were a vow. Lyra pushed herself up slowly, her muscles still weak but steadier than before. She clutched the blanket around her shoulders and met his gaze. "Why?" she asked. "Why go so far? Why risk so much for me?" Cale studied her for a moment, his jaw tightened. "Because no one deserves to be broken like this. Because I remember how it feels." Her eyes widened slightly. "You?" He nodded once. "I've been where you are, forgotten, abandoned, left with nothing but cold stone and silence. I survived, but not without scars. I cannot erase what happened to me, but I can choose what I do now." Lyra swallowed hard. Her heart trembled with emotions she did not want to name. Hope was dangerous. It had betrayed her before, yet Cale's words pressed against her walls, cracking them further. "You speak as though you mean to free me," she said cautiously. Cale leaned forward, his voice dropping low. "I do." Her breath caught. The word struck her like a blade, sharp and impossible. Freedom. It was something she had buried long ago. "It cannot be done," she whispered, shaking her head. "The guards, the walls, the chains, they will kill you, and me." A faint smile touched his lips, though it carried no humor. "Maybe, but I've faced worse odds before, and I'm still here." Lyra looked away, her fingers clutching the blanket tighter. "You're a fool," she muttered. "A dangerous fool." "Maybe," Cale agreed calmly. "But sometimes it takes a fool to change the world." The silence that followed was heavy. Lyra's chest rose and fell quickly. Her mind raced between fear and longing. She had accepted despair for so long that the thought of hope felt like poison in her blood. Yet part of her, the part that had endured 16 nights on stone, wanted to believe. Cale rose to his feet, his shadow stretching across the cell. You will need your strength. Tonight, everything changes. Her eyes snapped back to him, fear surging. Tonight? Yes, he said firmly. I've watched their patterns. I know when the corridors are weakest, but it will not work unless you choose to rise. You must be ready. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her body trembled. Her mind screamed with doubt. Yet beneath it all, a small voice whispered, "This is your chance." She lifted her gaze slowly, meeting his steady eyes. There was no hesitation in him, no doubt, only a fire that refused to die. I will try, she said at last. Her voice shook, but it carried a strength she had not heard in herself for years. Cale nodded once. That's all I ask. For the first time since her exile, Lyra felt something bloom inside her chest, fragile but real, not just survival, not just endurance, but the beginning of belief. The awakening had begun. Night returned, thick and silent. The lamps in the corridor flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the floor. Lyra sat on the mattress, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. Her heart pounded with every sound. She knew this night was not like the others. Cale had promised change. When his footsteps came, she recognized them instantly, soft, steady, measured. Her silver eyes lifted, and there he was, Cale moving through the corridor with the calm of a man who had already decided his fate. "You're ready?" he asked, his voice low. She wanted to say no, to admit her fear, but instead she nodded. "I will try." Cale gave a faint smile, the kind that carried no joy but held strength. "That's enough." From beneath his coat he pulled a small device, metallic and battered. It hummed faintly in his palm. "This will disrupt the locks for a short time. Not long. We must move fast." Lyra's breath caught. Freedom was no longer a dream. It was here, inches away, but so was death. She trembled, pressing her hand against her chest. "If they catch us." "They won't," Cale interrupted firmly. His eyes burned with certainty. "Not tonight." He pressed the device against the lock. Sparks danced. The bars shivered. And with a sharp click the gate swung open. The sound echoed through the corridor like thunder in her ears. For 16 nights she had stared at those bars, and now they stood open. Her legs shook as she rose. She clutched the blanket still, unable to let it go. It was more than fabric now. It was proof that kindness was real. She stepped forward, each movement heavy with disbelief, until she stood just beyond the threshold. Cale extended his hand, not forcing, simply waiting. Lyra stared at it, fear and hope warring within her. Then, slowly, she placed her trembling fingers into his. Warmth spread through her, steady and strong. The bond was sealed. Together they moved, silent, quick. Cale led her through narrow passages he had studied for days. They slipped past empty guard posts, past rooms filled with echoes of cruelty. Every step was a battle against fear, but his presence kept her moving. At one point, distant voices drifted toward them. Lyra froze, her body stiff. Cale pressed a finger to his lips, guiding her into a shadowed alcove. The guards passed, oblivious. Her heart thundered. She realized then how fragile this chance was, and how much he risked for her. When the path finally opened to the outside, Lyra gasped. The sky stretched above them, vast and endless. The stars shone bright, like silver fire scattered across the dark. She had not seen them since her exile. Her knees buckled, tears filled her eyes. "I thought I would never see them again," she whispered. Cale looked up as well, his jaw tightened. No one should be kept from the sky. She turned to him, her voice breaking. "Why me, Cale? Of all prisoners, why me?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "Because I saw someone who refused to die. Even when they gave you nothing, you endured. That kind of strength deserves more than chains. It deserves a chance to live." Her chest ached. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, she held his hand tighter. For 16 nights, she had been nothing but a shadow on stone. Now she was standing under stars, beside a human who had given her back her dignity. The alarms had not sounded yet, but they would. Cale knew their time was short. He turned to her, voice steady. "We move now." to freedom. But from here on, we are no longer prisoner and rescuer. We are allies. Do you understand? Lyra nodded slowly. Tears streaked her cheeks, but her eyes burned with new fire. Yes, she whispered. Allies. And as they vanished into the night, two figures bound by trust and defiance, the galaxy itself shifted, for it was not weapons or power that changed destiny, but the bond between a human and one who had been forgotten. For the first time in 16 nights, tomorrow no longer felt like a curse, it felt like hope.